Welcome back to the Turn on the Music podcast. Welcome to episode 8. My name is Kyle, and of course, I've got CJ here. How are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
I'm doing okay.
Nah,
How's your week been?
stop. Let's just say it was a week. I'm glad it's the weekend.
Okay,
I feel like today was a recuperating day for it, so I'm hoping tomorrow it's a nice day. I feel refreshed
good.
and get back into the swing of things. I need to get back onto not letting the weeks hit me as hard as they're hitting me.
Yeah, I hear you.
How was your week?
It's the weekend.
And the only reason we can ask this question is we happen to be recording a few days after than we typically do.
Yep.
Typically, we're midweek when we're recording, and it feels like a week has already passed once we're
Right.
3 days
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, last week felt like about 4 weeks, so
I know.
it was not fun.
I know. But hopefully this upcoming week won't be too bad going into the 3-day weekend.
Yeah. I hope so anyway.
Yeah, I agree. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
No, we're here to talk about a book.
Yes, but let's talk about what are you listening to?
That's what I was going to ask you. So, as you know, Victor Wooten is going live. I told you that. Not going
Yes.
live. He's going on tour with his brothers, and I've been listening. They're taking a group with them called the Rebirth Big Band, or Rebirth Brass Band,
Yes.
and I've been listening to them a bunch. They are really good. I like them.
I have to listen to them because I did buy tickets for them when they're in Brooklyn. They'll be in Brooklyn October 7th. I bought 4 tickets. A couple of our followers will be joining me. We decided to buy it as a group, so we're going in. The only thing it stinks, it's a standing room only place.
Oh yeah,
Tickets weren't expensive. They were not bad. I was impressed by the price. They were like $35, and then they have the fees on it.
mm-hmm.
So with the fees, they were like $50. They have a quick access pass, so you bypass the general admission line
Mm-hmm.
for $15 more. Totally spent the extra $15. I was like, you know what? I was expecting to spend $100 on a ticket.
Yeah. It's funny because I was telling Jen about it, and they're going to Philadelphia, which is where she lives, or just right by where she lives, and it was standing room only $35. So maybe they're only doing.
Maybe it's not a big show.
Well, when you listen to this, maybe there's a lot of dancing involved. So,
What do you mean?
I'm going to play a little bit of what they sound like.
Of the Rebirth
Brass Band.
Yeah.
So this is a tune called "Lord, Lord, Lord, You've Sure Been Good to Me." So it's kind of a New Orleans, kind of band. It's really cool.
That's awesome.
They do. There's a live album, and one of the songs they cover is "Waterfalls" by TLC.
Oh, now I gotta check this out.
So
Okay.
yeah, they have some really cool stuff. So just be
That's
careful. Their live albums tend to have explicit lyrics, so just be careful where you listen to it.
Why?
I don't know why, but they do.
No, I mean, why should I be careful?
I just don't want you to listen to it working at Fired.
Usually at work, but just because of the way it is, I put an earbud in, so
Okay.
no one really can hear it.
Gotcha.
But that's good. My son curses enough as it is, so it doesn't really matter. So, there's nothing to change out of that. He just did it earlier, so it was really funny.
So what was really strange was I was streaming Friday night, and I was trying to play that album, and I went to play the album, and I went, "This doesn't sound right. Like there's something like." So here's what I started playing. It starts like this. You know, it's kind of creepy.
That panning's awesome, though.
Yeah, the panning's cool. But it goes on like this. So somehow Koba's has like switched like the music and the like the title or something. So I Shazammed it. It's something completely different. The entire album is
That's
wrong.
that's hysterical.
And I was sitting there going, "This is not what I listened to." It took me a while to figure out what was going on. So I actually had to stream it in Spotify instead of Rune, but whatever.
That's hysterical.
So that's what I've been listening to. What about you? Anything new, different?
Um, Not really. I mean, like I said, at work, I share we'll share play, and we've been doing a lot of Broadway shows. We've done some '80s music. I think in the car, I've been listening to the audiobook. But if I'm not listening to the audiobook, I tend to sit and listen to Victor Wooten just because that's kind of what we're in right now.
Right.
But I've been meaning to now that I bought the tickets, I do want to listen to the Rebirth Brass Band because I think that'll be worth listening to now, especially now that you shared a little
Yeah.
clip of it. So,
Yeah.
but I'm excited because I've never seen him live. I know you have, so I'm excited
Hmm.
to go in.
I'm wondering if he's gonna have the band out the whole time, or if it's gonna be just an opener and closer kind of thing.
Oh, because they okay, I can see what you're saying. It's an interesting venue. When you look at the pictures, it looks like it's kind of deep
Hmm.
more than it is wide. That it's more like kind of long enough. So I wouldn't be surprised if they set up in front and then they just get on stage and join them or whatever.
Yeah.
So it can work. I don't know how many seats or how many standing room they're selling, but I was
Hmm.
I mean, I don't mind. It is what it is. Like
Yeah.
even if it's a couple hours, it's not that big of a deal,
Hmm.
you know. It should be fun.
Yeah.
I think
How
it'd be
far are
nice.
you in the book?
For number two,
Yeah.
the music bus, the Spirit of Music.
Yeah.
I've been listening to the audio. I'm on chapter 17.
Okay.
No, wait. Hold on a second. I'm completely wrong. I'll tell you right now because I got my phone in front of me and I'm listening to it on my phone, and that'll give me a better idea. I am. It's gonna start up. I am on chapter 17 actually. Yep, measure 17.
Okay. Cool.
Oh, okay. I only have like, according to this, I have 2 hours and 45 minutes left. I've noticed though that because of the way they do the chapters,
Hmm.
it's more like when they talk about music, they actually play some music. So there's gaps where there's no reading of the book.
Right.
So the chapters are longer in a sense.
Hmm.
But I still think it's well put together for an audiobook. Both of them are.
Yeah.
I really do. So yeah, measure 17. So only a few more measures left.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So shall we get into measure 8?
Measure 8. Oh, before we even talk about the things that we picked out in the chapter,
Yes.
what is your overall thought of the chapter?
I don't.
Because I think we're going to be sharing a little bit more of our beliefs in this one
I think so too.
because of what it is. And I had like
Hmm.
I've spoken about this stuff before, so
Yep.
I'm just curious of your thought. Like, what is your thought?
Uh, I think that there is a fair amount of truth to it, the whole chapter. I think some things are embellished. I don't know how much is embellished though.
Okay,
So,
that's it. Okay,
what about you?
that's it. Um, I'm with you on that actually, because of my beliefs, and as we go through, we'll share. But because of my beliefs and my thoughts and all that stuff, I'm with you on that. I believe some are embellished. Um, I think now going through this book a second time, and you've gone through it, I'm sure, more than I have. Uh, my the questions that start to arise is how much of these words are actually Michael's,
Hmm.
and how much of these words are actually Victor's that he's
Right.
using Michael as the voice for.
Hmm.
Because I'm sure Michael, because just by looking at him and the way he plays and what he does, he's probably very similar to the character in the book.
Yeah.
And I say character because we don't know him well enough to say if it's truly him or
Right.
not. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's like 95% him.
Hmm.
Like, just because of what it is. But I'm curious of what he says, that even in the Spirit of Music, the way he writes is very, very philosophical.
Hmm.
And I'm not saying he's not a philosophical person. You could tell that he is, but I want to know
Right.
how much is him.
Hmm. Well,
So,
wait till you get to the end of the second book.
right. I was noticing, like, I kind of looked ahead, not reading, but I looked at, like, the
Hmm.
chapters, what they're called, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And I still can't see out of my glasses. So go ahead and start.
Okay. So this chapter is going to be. I don't know how I'm going to share this chapter because there are like pages that I've highlighted.
Okay.
Um, so I don't know how.
You highlighted full pages.
Yeah, like full pages.
I think in a sense I've done the same,
Okay.
but I think because this is the second time I read it, I kind of picked out probably I was probably a little more pickier than you were.
Mm-hmm.
Like you read it multiple times, you probably over the times of reading it multiple times, you're like, okay, I actually have to highlight this now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you start, and then if I can maybe help.
Gotcha. So the it starts. So we left off where Sam left Victor's house last week or last chapter or whatever. And Victor starts driving downtown and sees a guy that resembles Michael sitting there next to a homeless guy talking to this guy who he finds out his name is Uncle Clyde. And as usual, Michael's dressed in a weird outfit. And yeah, so the chapter I don't think we mentioned, the chapter is called Tone. So let me get back to the beginning.
There is a whole tone to this chapter.
Yes, there is.
It's a completely different tone than what the other chapters are.
Yeah, yeah. So the little blurb before the chapter starts is doctors use lasers to operate. Music in the right hand can do the same thing. So um so anyway, Michael's driving downtown, sees this guy that looks like Victor's driving downtown, sees a guy that looks like Michael, and it turns out that it is him, and he's talking to a gentleman by the name of Uncle Clyde. And that's where we kind of find them. Uncle Clyde and Michael are talking, and Michael introduces Uncle Clyde and gives him kind of a once over, and Uncle Clyde inspects Victor and gives him a physical, and yeah, that's kind of I don't have much in the beginning, it's just kind of introduction to Uncle Clyde. I don't really
Well,
have anything until
so that introduction, the only thing that I think stood out to me, because I agree with you, it kind of starts later on, was what Michael and Uncle Clyde were talking about, which I thought
Mhm.
was very interesting, and I think does preface some of what they talk about in the chapter. Is right now they're trying to figure out if life is alive or not,
Mm.
and I thought that was interesting because um, later on, and I think this is kind of where you start highlighting. They put he says, if life means that something is alive, then that means that life is alive,
Right.
right? And where, mind you, the way it's written in the book is very, it, what would you say, slangish dialect in a way.
Hmm.
Like the way they speak is, "This is Uncle Clyde. He's originally from New Orleans, but
And it's kind of
so
fitting that we played the Rebirth Brass
right, it was
Band
very
for this
yes, yes,
chapter.
yes. So
Not planned.
yeah,
So
not planned. So it's very interesting to read it because of the way it's written. But
yeah,
that I thought was interesting, that part with the whole life thing.
yeah, yeah.
I don't know if you talked before, if you have anything
So the
before that.
first thing I've got is on 164. I'm not sure where you're looking.
No, go ahead.
So Uncle Clyde says your body resonates with a certain vibration. I'm gonna change the dialect a little bit.
No, no, I think you
Uh,
should read.
no, I should not. Uh, this vibration puts out a certain tone that I can read. So this is when he's analyzing Victor. So he says this vibration puts out a different tone that I can read depending on what your soul is up to. Sort of like how an engineer can read the tones in music. You see, your soul has an agenda for you. Now, even now, even you don't know what that agenda is, and I can see that. But your soul is just about to catch up with each other. It's always exciting when that happens in a person's life. For some people, it happens before they get here. That ain't no fun at all. This is where the fun is at. I want to see you again in a few years. So he's kind of realized, and I guess part of it is, talking with Michael, that, Victor has been kind of lost for a while. And he realizes that he is starting to get things like together. And that's what he's kind of read, about his energy level.
And it's funny because that resonated with me because recently I feel like I'm doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle and I, being friends outside of here, we speak often, and he knows. So I'm going through a process of something on myself, and I was reading that, and I'm like, because I read the book once before, but I didn't remember it as much, and I read it when I read through that again. I'm like, wow. I'm like, that hits, because it's true. I believe in that. I believe that we are our bodies are vessels, and our souls are just utilizing this vessel. And if your body hasn't met up with that soul yet, it takes time, and some people don't know it until later on. And I agree. I think that's more interesting than if you're just kind of born and like you go through life going like, I got it. It's all in line for me. You know.
Yeah, and the book that I'm reading right now, Spirit Awakenings by Tom Brown, it's where I'm at in the book. It talks about the same thing. How about there's a spiritual mind and a physical mind, and our culture kind of nurtures the physical mind as opposed to spiritual mind.
Right.
And the book talks about how to nurture the spiritual mind and live in the spiritual mind kind of every day. So it's kind of the same thing that Victor's going through, but from a Native American perspective.
Now I need to read that book.
Yeah.
I believe more in that than I do in the physical mind. And I think that's what my biggest struggle is, dealing with
Hmm.
past trauma and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
trying to process. And I used to be in that spiritual mind, and I'm not anymore. And I want to be
Right.
back in it because
Hmm.
it realigns everything.
Yep.
That's interesting. What is the name of that book again by Tom Brown Jr.?
Spirit Awakenings.
Okay, Spirit of Awakenings. That's the one I got
It's
to pick up.
really hard to find.
That's fine.
I was
I'll
looking on
figure it out.
Amazon for it. They've got one copy left for $73, and I was like, I am
Yeah, I'll
not buying
find
that
it.
for you. So,
No. I'll find it. But even if
um,
I mean, if they don't have a digital version,
nope, I don't see a digital version. There is a version that's got, I think it's the Tracker, Spirit Awakenings, and the Vision. I think
okay,
for like $35. It's like a one book that I would do, because I don't have the other
that's not
two
bad.
books. But
That's not bad.
yeah, I
Cool.
haven't found a digital version of it yet, but I've been looking, so I'll let you know if I find one.
Thank you. So I'm I don't know where you go after that, but I have underline. You know, Victor asks Uncle Clyde, you know about music too, and he goes, I plays music, and he says, once you stop playing your bass, you're gonna start playing music too.
Hmm.
That's so that's so big. I
Yep.
think. I
Yeah, and
think that's
it's
something.
come up a lot in this book.
Yeah, and it's something that really needs to be taught in lessons. And it's funny, one
Hmm.
of our listeners, their son is taking trumpet lessons, and they've been sharing what he goes through in his lessons, and he's been playing a little bit for me, and even to the point where they're like want me to take my soprano or my alto with me to their house one day and jam with him.
Hmm.
And um and they were telling me about how the teacher is going about the lesson, and I'm like, that's pretty cool,
Hmm.
because there are times when he's focusing on what he's got to learn, but then he's like, I just want you to jam. Just pick a song and jam to it.
Yep.
Play whatever. It doesn't have to be,
Hmm.
but just play to the song.
Yeah.
Like, and I was like, that's awesome, because that's a part of what's in this book here. So I told him, I was like, next time you go, ask them if they're reading the book, the music lesson. Out of
And if they're
curiosity.
not, share our podcast.
So, it's true. I mean, even as a vocalist,
Hmm.
I think even as a vocalist, I work so hard to make sure I'm memorizing the words, understanding what I'm singing out to everybody, and then you kind of lose yourself in that and you forget the music.
Right.
And I don't, like that to me is like crazy that you can forget the music like that.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think another way of talking about it is, you know, we spend so much time focusing on the instrument,
Right.
you know, like if you think about like this is an instrument, right?
Right.
And I'm holding up a pen for those that are not watching YouTube. Um, you don't go up to an author and go like, "What instrument did you use to write that book?" Like, it
Right.
doesn't matter. Like, that's not the important thing.
Right.
We
Right.
spend so much time talking about, when you meet someone who plays a musician, you get, wow, you play, whatever instrument. I could never do that, and it's like you're defeating yourself before you even start. You are focusing on the wrong thing.
Exactly.
Um,
100%.
no one asked, but I know Michael Crichton. It's like, well, what pen did you use to write Jurassic Park? I want to see it. Like it doesn't matter. The
And if he responds, it's a bit scary because he
yeah,
doesn't have a
I used a fossil pen. It
No, but it's
was
true.
made from a dragon's tooth
It's true though.
or dinosaur tooth was what I meant to say.
I-
Can you tell I've been
um,
playing Zelda too much?
yeah, well, what else are you gonna do, right? I'm sorry, I'm trying to adjust the light a little bit.
No, you're fine.
So for those who are not watching, they're listening. My light was just too bright in my office. Um, yes, though that's true. Like everybody has a tool to their craft, but it's just a tool. It's just an extension. I have this conversation with in education.
Hmm.
We still are educators, and you're still teachers going into the classroom. The technology that's there is just a tool.
Right.
You are still the teacher.
Hmm.
And in order for those students to learn, you need to engage those students accordingly. You should not have to use the technology every time to engage those students. I'm not saying you're not going to use technology as a tool, but you as the teacher need to, and I'm going to use the words from this book, need to show them.
Hmm.
And by using that as a tool, the technology as a tool to show them, that's going to make better students.
Yep.
That's just, I've always felt that way. I felt that way since I thought the process of the thought about going into education. And I didn't end up getting a teaching job, and some people are like, it's good because you probably wouldn't make it through the 4 years because you probably would create too many waves in the school, and they'll probably be like, you need to go.
Right. Yep.
So I'm going to try to attack it from the outside in,
Hmm.
and see what I can do to change the thought process.
Yep.
So um that continues. Do you have any more on that page 165?
I don't know where this is in the book. I just, one of the things that always hits me every time I read this chapter is when Michael says that Uncle Clyde lives the way he does because he just wants to be left alone. So Uncle Clyde is a homeless person. He's really not. Like, he actually has a place, but he prefers to live that lifestyle because people leave him alone, and it's kind of like, I want to do that.
And
I want people
you're
to leave
actually
me
at
alone.
the next page, page 166. He talks about how even the government will let an old crippled homeless man be.
Hmm.
But he makes it very, I appreciate the fact that he puts this. He goes, I never thought about a person choosing to live that way. I tried to understand Clyde's position, but the comforts I was used to didn't allow it.
Hmm.
And that's so true.
Yep.
We have comforts that we're very lucky to have.
Hmm.
And these people that, whether they've been homeless all their life or they had comforts and became homeless, they don't have those comforts anymore. And they have
Right.
to readjust their living. And, he's a nomad. That's what he is.
Hmm.
He's a nomad.
Yeah.
And I'm going to try changing this color because it's annoying me. There we go. That's a little bit better. Now I look like I have an orange tan. Who does that? Oh no, I can't read the book. I can't see it. So no. That was page
Ugh.
166, actually.
Okay.
On the bottom of that, okay, so there, they taught what happens is after that moment, or around that time that happened, they witnessed a car accident. So they saw a car hit a pedestrian, and the
Hmm.
pedestrian went flying into the air, and Victor said it was surreal to just see it, and they ran. All three of them ran up, and he mentioned how Uncle Clyde, who looked like he was ratty and all this stuff, just ran gracefully, like
Hmm.
like
And if you're earlier in the book when he was getting up to give Victor his physical, it looked like he could barely stand up. He was
right,
just
yeah,
but
plays the part well, is what he's saying.
yeah.
Um, Talk about the fact that he's injured. He's laying on the ground. He's bleeding on the head. His head's bleeding. And they just stood there staring for a moment. And then I don't know if this is what you were going to get into, but Michael knelt down and placed the injured man's head in his lap. Clyde knelt down across from him, and Victor saying, "Don't touch him," but that's what they're doing. So Michael begins to sing a soft melody as he gently stroked the man's forehead. Uncle Clyde was sitting there, slightly bobbing his head up and down, not nodding to the beat of Michael's tune, just off in his own world. And no one kind of like noticed.
Hmm.
This is what he did. And then moving forward, it states every once in a while, Uncle Clyde would wave his hand over the man's chest as if he was petting the air. It was a gentle motion that almost went unnoticed. Michael kept singing lightly all the time with a gentle smile on his face. And this is all kind of going on and going on and going on. I don't know if this is any of the stuff you underlined.
It's not actually. I had this stuff, the analyzation afterwards.
Okay, cool. So I'm just giving a little bit of the
Yeah,
background to
yeah,
this
this
then.
is
Okay,
fine.
perfect.
Yep.
Perfect. So Victor's watching this. Michael keeps his right hand on the injured man's forehead while Kyle places his right hand on the man's
Well,
chest.
who does what?
Clyde.
You said Kyle.
Did I say Kyle? Oh, I
You,
did say Kyle.
you sure did.
Kyle, what are you doing in Dicta? Clyde put his right hand on the man's chest. At that moment, they held their left hands together. Michael stopped singing for a moment, and then the man's body twitched, or basically jumped. Okay, ambulance comes, cops come, they decide to leave, and just as Clyde and Michael walked off, and Michael told Victor to follow him, Victor happened to look back, glanced at the injured man, and noticed that he was now sitting up, wiping his eyes, and realized there was no blood coming from his head, and just had no idea and wanted to question Michael. So
Hmm.
that gets us into Michael and Victor meeting at his car.
Right.
So is that where you get into?
That's where I get into it. Yep.
Okay, go ahead.
Yep. So after Victor asks a bunch of questions, Michael basically says, "I helped his body reorganize. His body had gone through a tremendous trauma and became disorganized. You see, each part of a person's body can act like an individual entity. Usually they work together, but when something like that happens, all the parts can take off running in different directions. Clyde and I help bring them back together. That is the best way I can explain it."
And to give a little more of a scene to this, Michael is leaning against his head against the window, and he's talking in a very soft tone, as if he's tired from what he did. So,
Right.
and I think that plays a big factor to the reader because you're typically reading about this guy that has full energy and has no problem doing
Hmm.
this, and all of a sudden he's drained.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and Victor asks, "You did it by singing?" He said, "Partially." And then he talks about an exhibit at a museum where metal plate, and they use a violin bow and the way it kind of makes things move. Um,
And
and he
that's a
goes,
really interesting thing. And that's not to go off on too much of a tangent,
"Good,
but we've talked about, Jacob Collier before and the different tunings that he uses. So we
right,
use, um, you know, when we tune in America, it's 440. There are places in Europe that use 442 and all this sort of stuff. But there have been studies done about A436, which is slightly lower than our A. But if you look at the shapes that vibration produces, they are more defined than the shapes that you get at A440 or A442. And there are studies that say that 436 is like the God tuning or something, and that there are a lot of and I think they talk about it they do talk about it in the Spirit of Music.
they do talk. It's a
Um,
big thing about the spirit of music, by the way.
yeah, yes, they talk
A
about
whole
all the
section.
different all the different numerical values and how they relate to parts of the Bible and parts of
Right.
science and all sorts of stuff. Um, and I think even a little bit into computers and stuff if you look at the numbers correctly. So it's
Yeah, yeah.
some crazy stuff goes on. So
We the more you read about this book, there's more to music than we realize. I mean, we've always felt this way, you and I know that. And
hmm
and the book kind of solidifies your thought process if you're that type of person. Like there's some people out there that just like doing music and they don't think more about it. There's no philosophy to it, but they're good at what they do and they want to put the music out there. But to me, there's more to it. There's more to it than just that, and I that's why I think this chapter resonates with me a little bit. Um, but I like they in the spirit of music they do talk about this, and I think there's a book they mention, and I'm actually interested to see if there's a real book out there or was it made up for the story because I'd love to know more about that. Like, why did we change the tuning? That's what they talk about is
hmm
we were originally tuning in one way and now we decided to change it this way, and it was kind of like the way the society was controlling everything.
hmm
So, um, I don't know if you have anything to say, but I was going to continue reading that
Yeah,
part.
go ahead. I'm looking at something kind of weird. So you keep going. I'm gonna play with
Okay,
this for
yeah,
a
yeah.
second.
So he goes on to say, but with the body, it is not just the pitch that is important. It is also the tone of the sound that helps produce the desired effect. Victor asks, what do you mean? Tone can mean a lot of things, right? He talks about toning of your muscles, toning of the color, photographers toning with painting, and, you know, but he decides to talk more about music and all that stuff. And then he talks about a nightclub. And I never really thought about this. But if you go into a nightclub,
Hmm.
which I went into a few, but I was never really that type of person. But you go into a nightclub, it's heavy bass. No matter what song is playing, it's heavy bass. At that time, you're kind of like, oh, why is it so bassy? Why is it so bassy? Why so bassy? But I've noticed, even with stuff that I listen to, Victor Wooten, I mean, because he's a bass player, but some others, you kind of want to hear that bass line. And I never thought more about it, but this states that the bass not only shakes the room, but it vibrates through the person's body. So you already feel like you're dancing. Your body's already
Right.
shaking, which
Hmm.
is why people dance. And they state, what if they didn't play the bass? And Victor's like, oh, it'll just clear the room. Like nothing would happen. Like no one
Hmm.
would be dancing. It's a very valid point.
Yep.
You don't think about that. And
And
then
there's
he goes
there's a
on.
lot more to it too, because if you think about it even more, the waveform for a bass is very large. It's a large waveform.
Right.
It's really big. Um, the higher the pitch, the more concentrated the waveform is, but the easier it dies off because so there are studies that show that by increasing the bass, you actually increase the motion of the air, so it makes the higher notes easier to hear. And
Right.
I heard one sound engineer describe it to me as it's like adding salt to your food. Like that's what the bass does, is it conditions the air in a way that it makes everything else sound better.
Right. Right. And it's so weird how it does that. And I have a new respect for bass. um, and then he goes into saying, you see, tone is a powerful thing. Even though the same music would be coming out of the speakers, the change in tone would cause everyone in the club to feel differently and therefore act differently, which is what we were talking about, right? So he says if you were going to play, like play your bass, if you want your audience to dance, you should use a certain tone. To quiet down, a different tone. You know, if you want them to be healed, an altogether different tone may be do the trick. All I did with the man in the street was use tone and pitch to convince his energy to reorganize in a way that would cause his body to heal.
Right.
Victor still doesn't understand this,
Hmm.
still processing this. And then he talks more about when you're healing someone or something, the choice to become healed or not is completely yours. Don't ever think that it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me read that right again. It'd be good if the lights were a little brighter. He goes, when you're healing someone or something, the choice to become healed or not is not completely yours.
Hmm.
Don't ever think that it is. You are only in charge of what you are doing, meaning the person helping heal. The energy you're trying to heal must agree with what you are desire, and on the same level, the person or thing being healed must also agree. So there's a lot of things in place that have to play.
Yep.
And then do you have, I don't know, you said you highlighted more of the analysts, but that's a lot of this stuff.
Yeah. So I just want to go back for a second because there's one little
Yeah,
section that I want to.
sure.
So there's on back on page 170. Michael says sometimes tone is the deciding factor that causes a person to listen to you or not, and there's so much to that. Because you can take that musically, and that's one of the reasons I don't like Dave Matthews is I don't like his guitar tone. I hate his guitar tone.
I can understand that.
I mean,
Hey, listen,
just
I'm gonna make, I'll bring up something. My cousin texts me and goes, do you like the Goo Goo Dolls? I don't hate them. I like
mhm,
them, but I don't hate them. I'm not going on my phone and looking for their music to listen to, but if their song came on, I'm not going to turn it off.
mhm.
And she goes, they're playing in August. Do you want to go? I was like, not really. I was like, I don't want to go see them live. I mean, I can't that weekend,
Mhm.
but I do. They're not a band that I would want to see live.
Right.
I don't need to see them live, if that makes sense. And whatever the case may be, I don't know if they'd be a good live band. They may be fantastic live for all I know, but they're not my. It's not the type of music I want to see. I'd rather see Victor Wooten. I'd rather see that type of stuff. Um, so it's funny. There's a guy on Instagram called a professor something. I gotta find him, and he's funny. Apparently, he's a professor during the day. He does entertainment at night, and a lot of his stuff is music related, right? And he's this older black gentleman with a gray beard. He's always wearing a shirt. We rock together. And it's multiple colored hands with the rock symbol, the horns, out of there. And he's sitting in his car and he goes, there's the captions like something like, "Don't ever think that you didn't like Creed or they weren't good." And he plays this song and he plays one of their songs. And he's like, you're listening to them and they're building up and you're like, oh, they are good. And you're just,
Hmm.
but it's one of those things I'm sitting here going, that's a good point.
Yeah, yeah,
A very good point. There's some songs out there that you listen to and you're just like, whatever the tone or the dynamic of the song, you're just kind of like, okay, no, this is a good song. I'm surprised it's good, but this is a good song.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Very interesting. Um,
S-
you continue.
Okay, so going back to what you just read, talk about music healing. What are your thoughts on that?
I think 100% music is healing. I think the reason why music is healing, and here's where we're going to go into this whole spiritual discussion. Music is vibration.
Yep.
Vibration is an energy.
Hmm.
We all vibrate. There is truth to that. There's no take the spirituality out of it. There's a scientific proof that there is energy that radiates from us, right? They don't know there's not an understanding of what you can do with it or whatever, but on the spiritual end of it, people know that you can transfer it, you can use it to heal. So how is it not possible that music cannot be a healing factor?
Right.
Right? If you and I mean this book talks about that. If you are using the right vibrations, the right tones, the right everything, you can heal somebody. Music therapy is there for a reason,
Hmm.
right? It's not because, oh, let's make some money and we're going to do music therapy and art. No, it works.
Yep.
There's a point to it. If I'm having a bad day and I know an album, I'll put it on and make me feel better.
Hmm.
And even Victor talks about that. He goes, some of the albums that he listened to would change his for it'll change his feeling, his emotion, all that stuff. People make fun of heavy metal music, right? And they say that everybody listens to is just angry people. It's not true. It's not. Most of
Nope.
those people are not angry. Part of the reason why is because they listen to heavy metal music.
Hmm.
And it takes that angst that you have and it's out there in a musical form.
Right.
And it allows your body to be like, oh, I feel good. That like my body's aligning, like it feels right. Like
Hmm.
there's no anger in that. Is it sung in an angry way? Maybe, but but a lot of these people that listen to heavy metal music, it's because there's something to it that helps them balance themselves out.
Right.
What's your thought?
I agree. I mean, we both thought about getting into music therapy at one point.
Right. We did.
So,
Yes, yes,
yep.
yes. Um, I think that I think the I think there's still suppression to the whole music thing.
Hmm.
Like we don't want to admit the fact that there's healing powers outside of our medical realm. Um, I know that there are some doctors out there that are starting to see the more homeopathic ways of doing things because it's better for the body in the long haul.
Hmm.
Um, but I believe in Reiki therapy. I
Hmm.
believe that that someone has the ability to use their energy if they can control it to heal.
Yep.
And what Reiki energy is basically that use of energy and vibration to realign the body
Hmm.
to work better
Yep.
or work as well as it can work.
Hmm.
Because everybody has their own health issues. Some people are healthier than others. Some people have their own elements. And not everybody's 100% healthy is the same 100% healthy.
Hmm.
But in order for you to maintain that 100% healthy for yourself, what can you do? You know, if you look at music on the mental health end of it, that which is what music therapy sits with,
Hmm.
it's doing something.
Yep.
So why couldn't do it for the rest of your body?
And I think if you think about some of the things that we do, I mean, it is completely music. You know, there's like think about one of the podcasts I listen to is it's a great podcast called We Built the Thing. It's three guys who are woodworkers. They just talk about life and the projects they're working on, their kids, that sort of thing. But one of the guys there has a terrible issue where his body just produces kidney stones. He's had
Okay.
surgery like 16 times, but one of the therapies is they blast essentially a bass note at his back to disintegrate the kidney stone. They find that if they find the right frequency, it'll vibrate in such a way that it'll just disintegrate and it'll be fine. That's music.
It's
That-
and it's invasive.
yep,
Invasive. Yes, it's invasive, so it's not
yep.
hurting him,
Hmm.
right? It's like that idea of breaking the glass with the right frequency
Exactly. Yep.
because
Which
everything
the
vibrates,
Mythbusters proved you can do.
right? And everything vibrates, and everything vibrates at a specific. Well, listen, plants are alive.
Hmm.
We know this. We know if we water them, they will grow. If we give them food and water, they'll grow. If we've they've even done experiments where if you play classical music or if you talk to your plants, they'll grow even better.
Hmm.
They've done and they've done things where like with heavy metal music where they say I don't think it actually does this, but it's possible that that vibration of those sounds is just too much for the plant that it can't respond to it. But I have a plant in my office. I'm watering it once a week because that's all it needs.
Hmm.
But there's nothing else that goes on in this office. Like I'll play music half the time it's through headphones, but I don't play crazy music. I talk to the plant once in a while, like I'll be like, "Oh, you're budding again. Oh, that's great. There's this, there's that." But why does that work?
Right.
There's just, there's a reason why it works.
Hmm.
There's a whole nature to it.
Yep.
You know, um, Look at how powerful when you I know you like to add a specific car stereo system to your to your stuff, and I
Hmm.
know that you do it more on balance than anything else. Like you balance out, like you'll cap out the bass from the speaker, so your bass is coming out of just the bass or whatever.
Yep.
For those people that put subwoofers and basses in their car, bass in their car specifically to make that car jump, and you're destroying the framework of that car.
Hmm.
The amount of vibration that that's causing to the car, eventually your car is going to fall apart.
Yep.
And I've seen it, and I've seen, it's just, it is what it is. I mean, don't get me wrong. You could put a factory radio up high enough, and
Hmm.
if your bass is high enough, you could see your windows go bzz and
Hmm.
vibrate,
Yep.
bzz. So there's just, it's amazing that they're building weapons with sound,
Hmm.
like just, we're afraid of what is unknown.
Yep.
That's what the problem is. We're afraid of the
Hmm.
unknown. And unfortunately, we live in a world in a society where things that they deem not ready for us, they will hold on to. I don't think so much anymore, but in the back in the day it was the case. Like MP3s were developed in 1977.
Right.
When did we start really using them?
Mm, 98, 99
Right.
maybe.
Right. And they were the precursor to the CD coming out for symphonies.
Right.
And the only reason why a CD was developed was because people didn't want to flip their records over anymore to play symphonies. They didn't want to have to go to get up and flip it, so they could put the whole 90 minutes. That's why it only held 90 minutes of music because a symphony is typically 90 minutes. That had to be an MP3,
Hmm.
but we as society was not allowed to use that MP3 yet.
Yep.
It's just conspiracy theories are fun. It's like the one I told you about the cones.
Hmm.
I
Yep.
heard like they're random conspiracy theories.
Yep.
When I was in Ohio with Kyle, I told him we were driving around. They were doing road work, and there's orange cones everywhere. And one of the things that came up on the internet, random conspiracy theories, was they've bought so many orange traffic cones that they don't know what to do with them, so they just put them out on the road anyway. Now, when you drive around after listening to this, you'd be like, they're everywhere.
That's right.
Oh,
Someone told me that COVID was just a way to change the batteries in the birds.
that's hysterical.
Yeah.
And what makes that even funnier to me is that I remember working at Universal Studios and people thought that the pigeons were fake. So that that's hysterical.
Yeah.
Um, so we went off a fun tangent, but it was definitely on track of what we were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We were on like one bottom 170 to the top of 171.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Victor's saying that the information was strange. And then he goes, the same is true when playing music. This is Michael. Have you ever realized that on some days you seem to have it, and on other days, under the same circumstances, playing the same songs, you can't seem to find it, which is what we talked about? Do you think that it's all up to you, or does music have any say in the matter? Most of us think that it's only up to us. That would be a mistake. And I love the fact that music is personified. Music is
Mm-hmm.
a being in a sense, and I kind of get that. I I do. I kind of get that. Like
Yeah,
I
me too.
I think there's more to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think there's more to it than just what we know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Victor says he talks about music as if it was real, and he asks about the stopping of the bleeding of the head, and Michael says, "How is that fast? Right? It's perspective." He goes, "All healing is instant. You're either sick or you're well. There is no in between. So the only thing standing in the way of being instantly healed is time.
Mm-hmm.
Time. What do they say? Wait, I'm not going to say it on the podcast, but time's a. She's
Son of a gun.
the son of a gun. Son of a gun. I don't know if you what you have after that,
No,
or if you.
this is I highlighted like 3 pages here. So
Oh yeah, because it goes on. So I don't know
yeah.
if you want to. I highlighted the next paragraph about time and space. Is that on yours?
Yep. Yep.
Why don't you take it from there, if you like?
Sure. So Michael says time and space are the only things that separate one thing from another. Take time and space out of the equation, and what is left? Oneness. That is it. But even though one could say that time and space are illusions, they are important. They serve a purpose. Without them, we would be unable to observe and experience individuality. The game would be over.
And he means the game of life.
Hmm. And then he goes on and says, life as we know it anyway would be over. You see, when you dream, you are allowed to play by different rules. Dreams allow the subconscious to play itself out instantly. Wherever you want to be, there you are. Whatever you want to be or don't think you want, there it is, all created by you. Now, real life, as most people call it, can be looked at as long form imagination, a place where things take time. The addition of time and space slows down our reality, and believe me, that is a blessing. In other words, time and space allow us to stop and smell the roses, or get pricked by its thorns. Learn to manipulate these elements, and you will play a different game altogether. Oh, hang on, sorry.
That's okay.
It wouldn't turn my page. The choice, even if I made unconsciously, is always yours. And then he says, the same is true in music. There is really only one note. Space and time allow you to experience the different characteristics of that note, making it appear as many notes. Understanding that will help you make any note fit in at any time. How you see it is always up to you. Think about it. Music and life would be much different without time and space. And we
Oh,
haven't talked about space because is that the next? No, it's not the next chapter. I don't think is it.
I don't. Um,
What is the next chapter?
Crazy. And space and rest is measured
Right.
tense, so we're
So
about
yeah,
a
we're getting
chapter
close to
away.
space.
So we're not going to get into that right away.
Mm-hmm.
But who did he talk to?
I don't know.
That's what I want to know. I want to ask Mr. Victor Wooten. I want to be like, listen, who did you talk to?
Mm-hmm.
Was it Michael? Because here, like, if it was Michael,
Mm-hmm.
why are we not hearing more from Michael? And I know the answer to that
Mm-hmm.
because if he is the person that he is in the book, it doesn't matter to him like that.
Right.
He's going to talk to those that he feels he needs to talk to. He's not going to just talk to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
which makes sense because you know what? As a storyteller, before the written word, you had storytellers,
Hmm.
and those stories were handed on down and down and down per generation, per generation, per generation,
Yeah, on VH1.
and VH1. Um, and then you have Michael, who I'm not saying is a storyteller, but his words and his beliefs and his philosophy. Why take the time and write it into the book when he can share it with others?
But he is a storyteller, as we talked about it earlier, because
No,
teachers
I
are
agree.
storytellers, and he's a
Right.
teacher.
He's a teacher, but he's not.
Right.
He's a teacher of nothing.
Hmm.
He is Seinfeld,
Yep.
which, if you think about it, that show about nothing was a show about everything.
Hmm.
And, you know, that's essentially what this is all about. It's like this book is, he's not, it's almost like it's Michael saying, you know this stuff already.
Hmm.
I'm just bringing it out of you. I'm just
Right.
showing you how to take it and make it happen
Right. It's that
versus you
whole
sit here.
Michelangelo thing with the marble again. It's, you know, just removing the stuff that's unnecessary.
Um, moving forward on that page, Michael mentions, if someone's sick, would you potentially catch their cold? And Victor's like, of course. So if someone's healthy, could I make somebody healthy? Like, should I not be able to make this person well? And that's what Michael's saying. And Victor's like, well, that kind of makes sense. Not, but even though I haven't talked about it, that word. And then going further down, um, so staying healthy benefits not just you, but everyone around you,
Hmm.
which is so true because if you cannot take care of yourself, how are you able to be there for those that you need to be there for, the ones that you
Right.
love and all that stuff? And he goes, because I'm healthy, I was able to model that on the gentleman that was injured.
Hmm.
And he goes, think about the word healthy. It's made up of two words, heal thy, heal hyphen thy. So you can choose to heal thyself or heal thy brother. The choice is yours. And I think that for me, that's always been the thing for music for me. I love the idea, and I wish I was performing more, and I wish I was out there. I wish I was doing 2 or 3 hour concerts. I love the idea of bringing somebody into any event space, whether it was 100 people, 1,000, whatever the case may be. And in that time frame, in those 2 or 3 hours, every part of their week, every part of their stress, every part of what they were dealing with in life, they were able to forget about for those 3 hours.
Hmm.
They were able to enjoy themselves. They were entertained, good, bad, or indifferent, whatever the case may be. But for those 3 hours that I was performing, or I was performing with somebody, or whatever, they were able to say, I'm feeling good, right? That happens every time you listen to music.
Right.
You feel good.
Hmm.
And it's like you're healing them at that. I'm not trying to say that I'm a healer or the musician's a healer, but you're using music as a way to help them turn off the negativity in their life to enjoy a moment. And maybe coming out of that, it changes their outlook. Maybe coming out of it, they go back to the way things were. And maybe in that at that moment, they have something to look back to put themselves in that place again whenever they're having a rough time. That's what music was always or is to me. And whenever I performed and whenever I had the opportunity to perform solo, that's how I tried to perform my music.
Hmm.
It wasn't really much of like, look at me, I can sing. It was more of, hey, come join me for a moment and step
Hmm.
away from the stuff that you're dealing with.
Right.
And I know you feel the same way about that.
Hmm.
We've spoken about that. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
No, I think you said it well
Thank you. I appreciate that. Um,
for once. You used words well.
well, I use words well. At the bottom of that page, he said there's many techniques that could be used by playing an instrument, and he uses tones, healing tones. And Clyde and I listened to see how his body resonated. He goes, I used the vibrations of my voice to alter the tones of his body. I needed to reorganize them in a more harmonious state. I didn't need to sing loudly because the vibrations were traveling through my hand and into his head. That produced a direct connection, but the tones have to be accurate in order to produce the desired effect. And then he states that Clyde was helping him to push and sort of heard the body's vibrations in the right direction. Remember when I said that all parts of the body were running in different directions? Well, his energies were scattered. Clyde helped to realign them. Once they had decided to regroup, we held hands, said a quick thank you, which I think goes back to thanking your instrument, thanking your body, your voice, thanking whatever you thank. It's funny when I say thank you to people. It truly is a thank you. It's truly a gratitude for that moment, because I feel like whether that moment was a 5 minute thing, a 2 minute thing, or a 30-second thing, it was an important 30 seconds or important 2 minutes, and I'm going to say thank you for it. Even when a person may say to you, you don't need to say thank you, because I say it sometimes, you don't need to say thank you, but I forget how that vibration's out there.
Right. Right.
So, and then and then Victor goes, but I saw his body jump. And he goes, sometimes the soul separates itself from the body in these types of situations to shield the person from extreme pain. Upon re-entering the body will often jump. That's all. I never thought about that. Being in extreme pain and your soul steps away for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting. What are you looking for? I can see you. You're looking.
Yeah. So just because they were talking about the vibration thing again, I was trying to find a picture of the sand, like 440 versus 432, and I can't. Is that?
You have a video?
Yeah, I saw a video years ago. Is it this one?
Do you want me to continue on that page as you're
Yeah, continue on while I look for
as
this.
Kyle looks through the Googles,
The Googles.
and so Michael says yes, it's all. He, Victor's just shocked. He doesn't. He says it sounds natural, but it still doesn't. It's very different. And then Michael says, I don't have to tell you what you already know about music. Music is vibrations, and that brings in the line: doctors use lasers to operate. What are lasers but vibrations? Music in the right hands can do the same thing. Remember this: the right notes cannot do it alone. The correct tone, as well as dynamics and emotion, can. Basically, all the elements of music, which is what this book talks about, and the elements are the same when it comes to life. And that's what makes this book almost like a Bible.
Mm-hmm.
Because it talks about all this stuff. And he talks about all that times, he talks about the elements of music and life and how different elements help with being confused and all that stuff. And then he says, you say that this is probably another page you highlighted the whole thing on. You say that you saw us heal an injured man on the street. If you take Clyde and the injured man and me and remove the elements of time and space, how many people would there be? 1. Remove time and space and tell me how many people were at the scene. 1. How many people are in the world? 1. Galaxy, 1. And is this person sick or well? Well, I hope. Meaning Victor saying, well, I hope. Then make it so. Which I think is a nod to Star Trek. Because that's what I keep thinking about that. And he said that was like the last time that he said anything for the drive because he reflected. But it's true. We're all one.
Yep.
We're all interconnected in some way, shape, or form. At least I think we are.
Mm-hmm.
Our energies interact, some more than others. Some are more empathic than the others. But we're all connected in some way. Did you find what you were looking for?
I did. So,
or you still haven't found what you're looking for?
I have found it. So what you're looking at. So for those that are on the YouTubes, what you are. Sorry, I knocked over my water bottle. What you are looking at is sand on a piece of, I think, metal. After a note was played tuned to A440. So you can see that there is a shape there, a definite shape. But here's the cool thing. If you go back This was played at 432. It's so much more defined from here to here. And what's crazy is they go through the whole scale, and you can see, and I'll put this in the show notes, but you can see how, like, here's another one, and there's that's 440. So these shapes, there's 432, that's 440. Sorry, 432, that's 440. You can see how the shapes change and they become more defined as so as we mentioned in the spirit of music, that according to them in the book, there was a point in time where they changed 432 to 440. And I did say 436 earlier in the episode, and I apologize. I meant 432. I had my numbers wrong.
How
Um,
dare you?
I know. So,
So yes, check that video out. That's going to be in the show notes. Because it is, on the visual standpoint, it's very interesting to see. I actually want to check it out because I've never seen the video. I'd love to see it, watch it.
yeah.
Um, so Victor continues on reflecting, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then he talks about a time that Michael calls a professor of physics, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep,
Yes.
physics professor. And how he was like, you need to stop teaching him and you need to show them. And apparently he had all this knowledge of physics as he was talking to this physics professor. And, Victor was like, he was saying words that were larger than my apartment. And he was just talking about how the fact that this is how you have to do things. And the professor was like, at the end was basically like, okay, you're right. I'm wrong. I'm sorry. I should do
Mm-hmm.
this. And apparently decides to change how he handles his curriculum and how he teaches. I don't know if there was anything you wanted to speak to on that, but that's the gist of that little page.
Yeah, that's about all I was going to say about it.
And then he also okay, so he talks about healing. At the bottom of 177, he goes, oh, what he did say though, before he called the professor, he goes, I told you, knowledge is in the air.
Mm.
And I think that's interesting because it makes it very, very, like, we don't create things without knowing, right?
Right.
Like, if I'm going to, let's take it to technology. If I'm going to code, which I'm something I want to learn, if I'm going to code, I'm coding something, but it's not something that I'm creating for the first time. I'm taking stuff that I know about, putting it together and coding something that I'm going to make based on stuff I know, not based on something that I don't know. And I was thinking about that, like, because, as an artist, I like to draw or paint or whatever, but half the time when I'm doing that stuff, I know what a square is. I know what a circle is. I know what a
Mm-hmm.
triangle is, which is why I'm able to do what I'm doing. If I want
Right.
to paint an animal, I know what that animal looks like. Like, I have to know these things in order for me to get there. And even if I'm creating something from scratch, I still have to know something,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yep.
I thought that was very interesting. And then I have something at the bottom of 177. I don't know about you.
No, go ahead.
Um, so this is at the end of him talking to the physics. Um, he goes, hearing him speak about tone raised more new questions in my mind. From what I heard him say, I could alter someone's body. This is Victor speaking. I could alter someone's body, mind, or attitude just by altering the tone. Was it really possible? I thought about how I felt when listening to some of my favorite musicians. I loved their tones, even though each one was different. I realized that my mood often changed whenever I heard them play, which we mentioned earlier. Um, and was it the tones that affected him? And he was realizing that tone is a much broader, thing in music or in general, because the tone you speak to somebody plays a factor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, sign language. The tone of your sign language plays a factor.
Mm-hmm.
If you're signing one way versus another, you could come across as being really, really angry, really, really happy, really, really sad. Like, and you wouldn't think about that in a visual language, but I've seen it, and it's crazy to know that it. You, I don't even have to know it, all the sign that's going on in that conversation, but I could tell someone's angry.
Hmm.
I can tell someone's sad, and a
Yep.
lot of that plays with the fact that facial expression plays a big factor. But there's still a tone to that conversation.
Yep.
Um, and that's kind of all it
Yeah,
is. They
that's
end up
all
at
I
his
got.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why did I talk so much? You were
Because
too busy
you
googling.
always talk so much.
This was a pretty cool. This was a good chapter though.
It was a good chapter, yeah.
It's so funny because it's like so far at the end of the book that it was almost like a huge turning point in the book
Hmm.
of
Yep.
what's happening. Yeah. What do you have to add?
That's all I got.
It's all she wrote. Well, that's all he wrote.
All she wrote.
All she wrote. So after this episode comes out, we would have been live. You were live. We're recording on a Saturday, which is not typical for us. So you were
Hmm.
live on the Friday night, and you played some
Corey
Rebirth,
Wong and some Rebirth Brass Band.
Corey Wong, and Rebirth Brass Band. And then
Yep.
Sunday, we continued our Victor Wooten journey with his albums, and it was Live in America that came up
Hmm.
next, which is a compilation of all live concerts. So it's not just one live performance; it's from different
Yep.
cities and states that are put together. But it's very well done because it almost feels like it's blended in. The only reason why you
Yep.
know is that they yell. Sometimes they yell out the name of the city that they're in.
Right.
Um, and then Kyle is. So let's go through the housekeeping real quick, and um at the time that the live show comes out, we will have a form out for our cover band performance that we want to do.
Do you have the form ready? Do you want it in this show notes?
I know I'm not. I may have it for you for the show notes. I have
Okay.
to put it together. I'm either going to put it together tonight or tomorrow.
Okay.
Um, so basically, when this episode comes out, we're going to have a form that you can fill out and share the songs that are covered by other artists that you feel are important. Maybe you like the version better or whatever. Like we use the example Disturbed's version of "The Sound of Silence" and how we think it's a very very good version of it, almost as if Paul Simon wrote it and our Garfunkel Paul Simon wrote it for them in a sense.
Hmm.
Um, so the idea is we will have a live showing. We were thinking of doing it June 4th or June 11th. I think we could have pushed it to June 11th. Give us a couple more weeks because the holiday weekend.
Okay.
Give some people some time. So June 11th will probably
So
be the
either way, if you're listening to this show and it's before June
yes.
11th, 2023, the link will be in the show notes. So,
Exactly. That's all that really matters. And it'll have the day, it'll have everything. And we hope you would join us on that day so you can come in and join us and maybe we'll start a little earlier, we'll start about the same time and go a little later. We'll talk about that. We're not sure yet. So we'll be doing that. Once again, Kyle does put these podcast episodes out on YouTube. For episodes 1 through 3 are static images. 4 and on are going to our videos, so you get to see our faces and our idiosyncrasies and little extra that are not typically in the podcast episodes. Every Friday, Kyle puts out shorts, and he salutes them. And then, as you know, every Tuesday our episodes come out. Every Friday, Kyle goes live on Twitch at 8 p.m. Every Sunday, we go live at 7:30 p.m. And then all good stuff. And, follow us everywhere. In the show notes, Kyle puts the link where you can follow us. There's our link trees probably. You put our link tree down there, don't you?
hmm
I haven't looked recently. Our link tree's down there. Discord, Instagram, Twitter. Discord's come join us, chat with us. We'd love to know what you're talking about. We have
yep.
gear stuff, we have book stuff, we have general music stuff. Just come
It's
join
really
us.
quiet because we don't have a lot of people in there. So join us so
Yeah,
we can make it more
yeah,
engaging.
yeah. We want to build that community. Instagram and Twitter to just know what's going on. Even if you don't interact with something on there, at least you're following us, so you know what's happening because that's where all our stuff gets posted to. We are working, I think, on an email list. We're still haven't sure yet what we want to do with that, but I know we've spoken, so that's maybe down the line. so you can get blast from us just knowing that things are coming out. Um, yeah, Twitch. Just go follow us on Twitch. Subscribe, follow us.
Hmm.
You get that stuff.
Yep.
I got nothing else.
I think we just say see you guys next time.